This episode is made possible by our generous patrons. To learn more, visit patreon.com/ink2film.
Welcome to the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book
and then see the movie.
I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
And this week we cover the end of Sharp Objects.
Hey, Luke. I'm seeing you from a new area now.
Yeah.
I can see that you're in a different place than before.
I'm coming to you from my Hobbit hole, my Harry Potter closet. Someone called it the prayer room on Twitter. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, it's a little room under the stairs, right? That's what Harry Potter is in, right? In the
Absolutely, cupboard, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a cupboard, and I've put padding on the walls, so it's my padded room now. And maybe I'm just crazy in here talking to myself, and you're a figment of my imagination. Who knows?
That's what all this is, yeah.
But we're talking sharp objects, so we're talking about people who have some pretty bad mental illnesses that lead them down some dark paths. So I think it's appropriate. Hopefully it sounds okay. I mean, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I mean, this has been a really interesting project for us. We've tried something different with it, right? And we've gotten some feedback from people who said that they enjoyed it. So I'm going to take that as a positive. Definitely let us know if you like the way we did this so that we can try and do it again in the future. Yeah.
I think that this is a cool structure that we should definitely revisit. But I think it does lend itself to a project like this. So right, like it's a mystery specifically, right? Kind of, yeah. Because it's like if we're doing a show that's like spiritually being adapted, where it doesn't really work as well to go back and forth. Right, yeah. Because if the adaptation is way different. And we didn't even know that going into this, though. We didn't know how close it was going to be. We just kind of lucked out because this is a really faithful adaptation. I think we've said that in previous episodes, but carried through to the end, which I didn't know if there was going to be some big departure. And there is some departures. So basically how we're going to approach this is just simultaneously, we're going to be covering the show and the book because they are fairly similar through the end. And we can address like specifics from book and show as we get to each plot point. And so the other thing is that I read and finished the book like an hour before I watched the finale. So it was very fresh in my mind. Sat down, because we didn't leave. Oh, and the last two chapters are very short. Read those and I went and watched. You, on the other hand, watched the show. And when did you read the last two chapters? The next day.
The next day.
So I read it the next day, yeah. Okay,
so I'm really curious. I wonder if there's a way we can talk about that without spoiling anything.
I mean, we can try, yeah.
Okay, so what was your... Because I feel like... And I almost feel guilty as a book lover to say this, but I feel like you might have got the better experience. That's my suspicion. Just because I don't know, I like there's a couple of big reveals that it almost felt like undercut that I had read them because the show just delivered so well on that.
I mean, I agree with you. Being a show watcher first, I think that's probably the better way to experience it. And I think part of it is kind of how the book structured the last two chapters, because it came out of Camille's perspective, and it basically went into like this listing facts. Adora was arrested. Like, I guess that's a spoiler, but you know what I mean. It was
well, we should say we're gonna spoil stuff in the finale on the show. Like that's If you shouldn't be listening to this if you haven't seen the finale of at least the TV series, right? We say that without unequivocally.
Yes.
Okay.
So all of this is going to be spoilers from here on. But yeah, so like the way that in the book it was basically just laid out for you. After that moment where Richard saves Camille in the book, it basically just from then on is like she went to the hospital, Adora was arrested, they found details in her house.
Right. Like it's like this epilogue that lays out everything that happened. Basically, which is funny because it wasn't called epilogue. I think it was just called Chapter 18. Oh, maybe it did have a subtitle of epilogue.
There was an epilogue, though. Was it? Like the last chapter was epilogue.
Yeah, and it was written in a different, like you said, like kind of a different voice and a different style almost.
Mm-hmm. Well, the epilogue was the other stuff. The epilogue was like once Amma had been taken in by Camille.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. See, it's funny because the book actually might be fresher in your mind than it is mine because you read it more recently. Whereas now it's like I feel like it's been covered up by the show because I watched the show and now that's like the thing that's really sticking out in my head.
So for me, I do think that the show did a better job of kind of wrapping it. And again, maybe we've talked about it in our past coverage, but maybe that's Gillian Flynn being able to, with hindsight, craft something that she likes more. Or I don't know.
Yeah, and
with the help of other people.
I think especially all the scenes that happen at the house, Adora's house, I felt like had been taken up a notch. Now, like, I liked them in the book, but we talked about it in that last book episode, I believe, where I said, like, I felt like some of those scenes were a little rushed, and I thought that was something they delivered on the show. They were able to really milk those scenes for the, pun intended with the title of the episode there. Not intended at all. But they were able to draw out the drama that I felt like was kind of a missed opportunity in the book. So it was something I was happy to see.
So yeah, let's just jump into the actual coverage. I'm going to read the synopsis of episode 8. It's called Milk. Camille returns home to find her family seated for dinner. She pretends to be sick to divert Adora's attention away from Amma. Adora poisons Camille to the point of near death. Richard knocks on the door and asks for Camille. The stepfather states that she is at a girlfriend's house. Richard arrives later with Chief Vickery, and Adora is arrested for poisoning her daughters. Richard finds bloody pliers that match the earlier murders. While recovering at the hospital, Richard tells Camille that her mother poisoned her with rat poison, and Amma built a tolerance towards it over the years while she did not. Amma moves with Camille to St. Louis and befriends a girl named May, who goes missing one day. Camille finds a tooth inside Amma's dollhouse and realizes the floor of one room is made entirely of teeth. Amma sees Camille looking at the tooth and says slyly, "Don't tell Mama." In a mid-credits scene, Amma is seen with her friends killing Anne, then Natalie. Further on in the credits, it shows her killing May.
Yeah, I want to go back and kind of hit things chronologically, I think, because I have a lot to say about the end, and I don't want to like jump on the fact that there's stuff at the beginning as well that I want to talk about. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So first off, her walking up to the house, it was really powerful because having that week off, and I feel like it had been looming in my mind, right? Like, what's it going to be like when she actually gets into that house? And to have it start the episode with her walking up, and she hears voices, I think, like she hears memories. What if a part of you stays behind when you die? Like that thing, and I can't, maybe one other memory. And she's approaching the house, and she comes in, and they're all already sitting there waiting for her. And it's almost surreal. Like I feel like this is something where I wish I had a more classical background in like education, because I think this is referencing something, and I can't put my finger on it.
What it was for me is that it played with the idea, it felt almost biblical or like some sort of cult or like seance type thing. She comes in and then sees the family sitting around like this, and Amma has the crown on. Yeah. And then she starts talking about like the Greek gods and Persephone and Hades, and it felt very much like something you would hear from in one of those.
It's almost mythical, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, because I got the same feel. Like it was, you hear about bacchanalias and stuff, right? These like big dinners and worshiping these old gods, and especially with Amma dressed that way and all the talk of Persephone, I think it does bring that up. Now, did you do any research into Persephone at all?
No, I just knew I was like super into Greek mythology for a little while, so like I was familiar.
Okay, so I just did. I feel like I knew some of this stuff, but I touched up on it for the show earlier. And I didn't do a ton of research, but what I saw is it seems like this was a story about a beautiful maiden who is essentially kidnapped by Hades, taken to the underworld, and forced to be his bride. And over time, she develops almost like a Stockholm syndrome and starts to like quote unquote love him, but there's Zeus and people like openly don't know if he's somehow being coerced. And so they come up with this, I forget why, the politics of Olympus or whatever, but they come up with this compromise where she's going to spend half the year in the underworld and half the year on Olympus. And this myth is to explain the cycling of the seasons. And essentially when she's in the underworld, it's fall and winter, and when she's in Olympus, it's spring and summer. So it's like life and death, the cycle of life and death, and the cycle of life. And I think about this myth and how it might connect to this story, I think in really interesting ways, right? Like this isn't a retelling of that myth, obviously, but you could say that it is drawing a lot from that, right? Like especially kind of the violence inherent there, women being used potentially. Like we talk about Calhoun Day was celebrating this girl being, attacked. So maybe it's something with that, and then also like life and death, and we've talked about the cycle of suffering passed on through generations in this family. I don't know. Like, can you make connections there?
Well, I think I want to say that some of this stuff was like laid out in the book or something, and just basically talking about when she is in Hades, when she's in the underworld with Hades, and she's like having to basically be associated with the dead. She doesn't like really enjoy it, but then once she's back on the surface with like everyone else living her normal life, nobody will associate with her anymore. She's basically like in both situations not happy, right? Because even though she goes back to where she wants to be, she still isn't like able to be a normal person there. And it's the same way when she goes to the underworld. So I feel like for me it's a lot of that like double life that Amma has to lead, where she's like in front of her friends, this one type of person, and then in front of her mom, maybe it's like her back in the underworld where she's not happy to be there, but she like feels like having Adora, take care of her is also controlling Adora. And then once she goes back to the other people, people associate with her and stuff, but she doesn't treat them well. So I don't know. That's kind of what I get from it.
Well, and then I started thinking about what if you, and tell me if I'm onto anything here. You could view Wind Gap almost as the underworld, and you could view everywhere else, or Chicago if you want, as sort of like the non-underworld where that's Olympus, or just like Earth. And Camille having to descend to the underworld, Adora's there as Hades, reigning from her like house that's floored with the teeth of the damned kind of thing, and Amma is kind of her prisoner there, and she's been tainted by this, obviously, and all she wants is kind of like approval from Adora, it seems like, and it's driven her insane, and love. I don't know. I feel like this myth is very intertwined in this story. And I like that she laid it out for us by having a character dress up as Persephone and say, I identify with Persephone. I think that it's like it lampshades it so that we can have these discussions, and it's not just something very abstract where it's like, yeah, you're really stretching it there. It's like, no, this is in the text and this is in the show. Like, this is very direct. So I think there is a lot there.
The way that this scene plays out when Camille comes in, Alan like is like very forceful about like having her sit down.
Yeah,
and
you're
like
right.
I almost feel like he might represent some sort of like, for me, not necessarily Hades, like in my analogy, like Hades, but he is like sort of the ideal Wingapian, where it's like he is so blissfully unaware of everything. Anything evil is pushed aside, and like he's like the embodiment of that. Maybe there's something there as well.
This is another time where I wish I had read Dante's Inferno, because I'm also thinking about, I wonder if Camille could be said to be like Dante, traveling into the underworld, right?
Yeah, and seven levels, right?
Right, yeah, the seven levels of hell, which is it's like, more biblical, I think. But regardless, what about Alan as like a Cerberus type creature? Like he's this servant, right, to Hades, doing his bidding, or her bidding, in this case, Adora's bidding. Because yeah, and it's in both cases, Alan is made out to be almost innocent by virtue of like ignorance, right? He just like was blind to it somehow, but also like he was complicit for sure, though, right?
But it's like a forced blissfulness. It's like he's like knowingly ignoring things.
Yeah, choosing to ignore. You're saying he's like choosing to be ignorant about it. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, let's get into what actually happens. I mean, I think there is a lot there, and I bet you like a week from now or a few days from now, someone will have a big write-up on published on an article, and it's going to be like, yes, that's what it, and they're going to break it all down. But I just I don't have all the knowledge base right now or the time to do the research with the move and everything. But I feel like there is a lot there.
So, I mean, at this dinner, she ends up eating the food. Were you a little worried that some of the food may have been poisoned as they were eating it? Because she kept like lingering on the food and like looking at it a lot in the drinks.
Well, and she also, I noticed, I didn't think that, but that's a good point. I mean, I don't know why I didn't, but with maybe just because I had read the book already, so I knew that she didn't get poisoned at the dinner. But Camille definitely her gaze lingers on the knife. I noticed at one point. Now, is you could argue that maybe the knife is more like, I could pick that up and stab Adora. because she is furious with Adora. Not only I really love the way Amy Adams portrays this, right? Like she is furious with Adora because of what she's just discovered about her killing Marion. But then she also is terrified. Like you can tell she is deeply terrified of this woman and what she's going to do.
Well, I don't know if she's even necessarily terrified for herself also. It's just like Amma at this point.
Yeah,
she knows that Amma's next up, and she thinks that Amma's innocent.
I think it's both, though, because it's like, if you strip away everything else, you know, this little woman who you could overpower, who doesn't actually have any power over you, right? But all of her power in this situation is built up in this family dynamic, and the fact that that is Camille's mother, right? And for so long has loomed so large. And so Camille can't just be like, fuck you, I'm taking Amma, we're getting out of here, you're poisoning her. You know what I mean? Like, she can't say that. She has to kind of play the game and act, because that's what she does here. She says, Mama, I'm sick. Take care of me. And she kind of takes the bullet for Amma, right? Instead of...
I love that part, yeah.
Instead of... Is it Amma or Amma, by the way?
So it's Amma, but I've said Amma for so long that it's just stuck.
Okay, yeah. My wife pointed out that I guess I say it wrong on the episode a lot, but then when I talk to her, I say Amma. I don't know.
It's probably I think it's my fault. I think it's literally like it got seated in my head, and then I was like, "This is how I'm gonna say it." For me, it's like I was thinking of it as like Anna. Some people say Anna,
right?
And then some people say Anna.
Yeah.
So for me, just like reading it, I don't know, for whatever reason, that just got stuck in my head that it was Amma.
Well, regardless, that character, we're gonna fuck it up, I'm sure, throughout the rest of the episode. So yeah, Camille jumps in the way of this, right? Because Adora is about to take Amma up to poison her. And that's when Camille kind of heroically takes her place. Now, this plays out a little differently in the book, right? Like, I don't remember it being as direct, like, I'm going to save her. I don't think.
Yeah.
Do you remember it? Maybe I just didn't read
I thought that what happened in the book was more directly connected to her injuries that she got when she, like, collided with Amma. You know what I mean? Like, she was like, from that moment, she started giving her the medicine. There was no, like, break in between it. And in this case... Oh, yeah,
you're right.
In this case... Well, I guess there was a little bit of a break because she went and, like, had sex with John Keane. But, like, when she gets back, her mom's, like, treating her wounds and stuff. And that's when she, like, really... Or, yeah, because Richard basically says, like, go back, act like nothing happens. And then when she goes back, she decides on her own to like take the medicine to have it as evidence. See,
that's the difference. I think a key difference. Well, there's two there. First off, I think the show is much more believable in having the police not quite know what's going on yet.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the book, Richard already knows, and he's just like, "We're gonna come in tomorrow, so just go and pretend like nothing's amiss, and we'll be there tomorrow." And which I thought was kind of silly almost, to go put someone at danger, right? Like in danger like that. Go, hang out with this serial killer. Whereas in the show, he hasn't quite put everything together. They haven't quite come around to Adora being who it is. They still think it's John. Mm-hmm. And so it creates this really nice drama of, are they going to get there in time? You know, is she going to get killed? All that stuff, right? So secondly, Camille in the book takes the poison to provide proof, because she knows that the police need proof to tie Adora to these murders, right? I don't think that's really what's happening in the show.
But so I agree with you. I agreed with you until she was saying like more, Mama. She was asking her to take more of the medicine. Like, why would she do that other than to have so much of it in her system that it would show up? Was she trying to die or something in the show?
Maybe, but I think you could also read it as her trying to die, because she's repeatedly been shown to be suicidal. I think a little bit, you could read it both ways, and I guess it's open to interpretation, but you could read it as her saying, this is what I was supposed to do, this is the way I was supposed to die, you know what I mean? Like, I should be like Marion and accept this. Or you could say maybe she's still, like, she doesn't want to let Adora go to Amma, right? Like, if I keep her here giving it to me, she's not giving it to Amma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It was tough, though, and it was such a different sort of scene. That's the other thing I want to give this show credit for, that I don't know that we've talked about enough. Like, this is a very different sort of serial killer, right? And, well, you know, obviously there's, like, two here, between Adora and Amma. Adora, who's like the slow poisoning mother, and this final confrontation that has everything from like, I think on like Silence of the Lambs, right? Like you got Jodie Foster walking around in the dark with the, Buffalo Bill and the night vision goggles and the drama of that, right? That's what you normally get, where this like lurking serial killer is like gonna attack you physically and all this stuff. Whereas this was a very different sort of confrontation. This is this loving, like, on the surface thing, whereas underneath it's just as dark, right? Where she's lovingly poisoning her daughter, and those two things together is so unsettling.
Yeah, it's crazy because you could say because of a mental illness, Adora almost feels like she's doing something she thinks is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
because it's like taking care of your daughter is something that you should definitely do. But she needs the attention so bad, and she needs to feel important so bad that she's willing to hurt them to try to help them.
Yeah, and it really gets into, and I think the reason that can work is it gets into the kind of psychology of a pathological liar like this. Because she has to she has to believe that to do the things she's doing, right? Or do you think she knowingly? Because at some point she's taking rat poison and putting it in the bottle and giving it to her daughters, right? Like some part of her has to know that that's what she's doing. But I think there's another part of her that's lying to herself about it somehow. Where does the lie end and the truth begin? And does Adora realize what she's doing underneath it all? Or has she fully convinced herself that she's actually giving them some sort of medicine?
Well, I think it's more subtle in the show because in the book we get that diary that's found, right? And she kind of talks about her reasoning behind it. Yeah. I feel like that makes her seem more malicious and more like wanting of attention was the reason why she ended up killing them in the end, because everyone's being so nice to me now that Marion's dead.
Well, you're right, because she does say there's that chilling line in the diary where she says, I think I went too far this time or something like that. And that's when she killed Marion. It was like almost an accidental. She just gave her too much.
Right, but then it was okay.
But then
because
afterwards, but I got so much, everyone's being so nice to me, yeah, exactly. So that's why I found that part was actually really chilling. But you're right, that does kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on what's going on with her. Whereas in the show, it is a little more subtle because you don't know. We never really see her confronted with the realities of what she's done.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't get that conversation between Amma and her at the end in the show, where she goes to meet like see her. And it's
I think in both the show and book, it's really interesting how Amma almost idolizes her still. Like, because we hear about, and I don't know if this is the thing in the show, but in the book, it's said that Amma is constantly researching women serial killers. And in the show, which to me was a sign that she really was looking up to her mother. In the show, we see her going and having this friendly seeming conversation with her in jail, right? Where Camille can't even stand to be in the room, but you can clear that Amma is like, putting her hand up on the glass and missing her mother. And I don't know, I like that. And it's obviously because Amma is also a serial killer, so that dynamic is so fucked up. I don't know.
So something that happens in between the dinner and the stuff that we're talking about is Vickery and Richard interrogating John Keene and kind of their relationship and how Richard sees that from the interrogation, they basically just realize that, I think that Richard realizes that it's not John, and him and Vickery have that conversation on the stairs where he says anybody can be forced to become guilty or to plead guilty if you press hard enough, even if they're innocent. And then they also kind of talk about the Camille-Richard relationship and also like mirror that to the Vickery-Adora one that we don't know much about. And kind of just Vickery says, I'm sorry about what happened. And Richard's like, there's nothing to be sorry for. And it's kind of this moment where we see the parallels for those two characters having interacted with these Preaker girls.
I also want to shout out a series on YouTube. Are you familiar with Vsauce? I think I've talked about him before.
We talked about him on the podcast before, yeah.
Yeah, so he has a series, I think, called Mind Hunter or something like that. No, not Mind Hunter. That's the Netflix show.
I know you're talking about his Red series.
Yeah, his YouTube Red series.
Yeah, I can't think of what it's called. It's Mind something.
Mind something. I can't remember either. I got the subscription for like as a trial and watched it just because I was curious about that show in particular. He did an entire episode about false confessions. And this just made me think of that. And I just want to say, go watch that episode if you get a chance, because they as a social experiment essentially did this. And I think they had like 10 subjects, or I can't remember the exact number. It wasn't that many though, and they were able to get one of them to confess falsely to something they did not do.
Was it something? It wasn't something bad, obviously.
No, it was. It was like I can't remember I mean, we're getting on the weeds here, but it was like the experiment was like they came in for a job interview, and then there was like 2 people, and then like one person left, and then they came back and were really angry and were like, we know that you did this thing. I can't remember what it was, like stole something. And they were accusing them of stealing something. It was pretty serious. And they were able to convince, like, you'd have to watch the episode to see like all the ways they did it, but they were able to convince somebody to admit to being guilty to something they didn't do. And essentially it was what he was saying, like you can break somebody who hasn't even done it. And that's what it was. There's this technique where you make it seem like everything that's going on right now is so unpleasant for you, and it's only going to get worse, and your only out to make it not as bad is to admit to what you did. And eventually people will sometimes take that, even though they didn't do the thing, because they get convinced that they just want this to stop, and this is the only way to get it to stop.
That's what I was thinking, is like, think of a non-confrontational person being confronted with something like this, and so even if they stole something, what are they going to have to do? Pay back the price of whatever it was,
right? So,
and some people will just pay that off, and for the inconvenience of being hassled by this situation, like they'd rather just be like, whatever, I took it. Here's the money, or whatever, slap on the wrist.
And what's crazy is there are people who have life sentences in prison for this, because they believed that admitting to something was going to get them off. You know what I mean? Going to get them off, and then like, they get a life sentence for it because they admitted to something like that, to killing somebody they didn't kill, stuff like that. Like, it actually does happen. Anyway, way in the weeds. Just go watch that series, and in general, Vsauce's channel is amazing. Okay. Back to the episode at hand, though. Sorry for that.
So, I mean, next up we get Vickery is in the barbershop, and then he's like, Alan walks in, and they almost have a confrontation.
Oh, yeah, there. That was fun. So passive-aggressive, Alan, as he's walking out the door, throws this little like passive aggressive, well, you're there as much as I am, or whatever, more than I am, and then he's like, come back in here, and then he just disappears. Alan's so weak. I don't know, like it's hard for me not to kind of just hate him. Like, I don't feel sorry for him anymore. I just hate him. Yeah,
he sucks. I also think it's interesting that Vickery was kind of just saying like, come in here and let's talk it out like men in this barbershop. Like, what could have come from that? You know what I mean? What was the goal here? Vickery just wanted to talk to him.
I don't know. I mean, and like, we don't know. I don't think we ever got confirmation of what Vickery's actual, like, have they actually ever done anything? Or has it just
I think so.
Has it just been that they've been flirting?
I think it's heavily implied, because when he's talking to Richard, he says stuff about how Adora needs attention, but she'll get angry if you give her too much attention. And I think, I don't know, the staring at Calhoun Day, and then this, and kind of.
So, are you aware of this theory that's been going around on the internet that Vickery is actually Camille's father?
No, I'm not, but that's also very interesting.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that the show does enough to back that theory up, and I think the book more heavily implies that he is not. This is, I think, a show only thing.
Dude, now that you say that, it's making a lot more. The show is making me think a lot more about that, because it's gotta. I think that might be a thing. Like, seriously, like, I don't know.
See, but my one thing that makes me think it's not is I don't get that interaction between Vickery and Camille at all. Like, I don't get that as a subtext of their interaction at all.
Well, the whole thing of it is like, does Vickery even know?
I think he would have to know, wouldn't he? Like, I mean, if he had sex with her around the time she had a child. He's, as far as we know, he's known her from the beginning. I just don't think it's possible that he wouldn't know that Camille was his child. I don't know, and I could see that maybe their relationship was so bad they didn't end up sticking together. But I just can't imagine Vickery would treat Camille the way he does, if he was actually the father. So I don't personally like that theory. Like, I get why people say it, and I think there is a reason to think about it. But the book also outlines basically that it was a stranger in a different town, right?
But who's to say that wasn't a lie? Like, didn't Adora tell us that?
Yeah, I don't know. There is an interesting kind of like mystery parentage thing going on there. Who's the father?
But I think it's interesting. I don't know if it's worth getting bogged down on right here. I think it's probably the answer to this question is it's another one of those situations where a mystery writer wants you to think one way or the other on this issue, but give you no concrete answers.
Yeah, and Gillian Flynn layers in all these mysteries, right? And I can see some people I wonder if people got frustrated with that. But in the show, there's a lot of these scenes in the past, right, with like where we don't really get concrete answers about what happened exactly. We're left it's left to our imaginations, right? Like, what exactly happened with her and the football players? What exactly happened? You know what I mean? Like, we don't ever get that as a scene or something where it's like, okay, now we know the truth.
But we kind of know because the
right?
Calhoun guy, he was like saying like we raped you, basically, right? He apologized for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know, but like I do think there might be some people who would be frustrated because they wanted to know concrete answers. And like the thing about the lesbian couple who got murdered or maybe committed suicide, and that was like a mystery that was in the book and the show. They talk about briefly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't remember that?
The mom and then the girl. I remember now. The daughter was in response to that, like having sex with like a lot of guys to like kind of offset the fact that people were making fun of her.
Yeah, because her mom was a lesbian who had mysteriously died way back, and that's kind of we talked about that with comparison.
I don't remember that in the show. That was in the show.
It was in the show. Yeah, they mentioned it briefly, and I can see people getting into the weeds and being like, I got to know that that mystery has to be revealed as well. But I think a lot of the mysteries of this town are just like going to remain mysteries.
I think that's the point. Yeah,
and I think we should go ahead and address. There's been a lot of people who've been asking about, is there going to be a season 2? Is there going to be a season 2? Right? And it's understandable because the show is so good and like these characters are so great and you want to live on with them, right? But I think unequivocally there's not going to be. Unless Gillian Flynn comes out and says, I'm writing another Sharp Objects book. But I can't imagine that's going to happen.
I mean, this is where I land on it. I can imagine that they'll make more of it because it makes money and because people are interested in it. But do I think that there should be? No. This is where I stand on like a lot of these things is that too much of a good thing is going to turn sour. Like if you're making it for the wrong reasons, then it's not gonna hold up a candle to the
I just don't buy it, mainly because I have too much respect for HBO.
They did it with Big Little Lies.
But was that based off of source material? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. It's based on a book, and then they made the first season, and then they're making it based on something completely. They have no more source material to go off of, and they're making season 2.
But what story is there left to tell here? I guess is my question too.
Well, I mean, you haven't seen Big Little Lies, but like I feel the same way about that.
Okay. Well, so this is where what I was going to say. I think if they do a season 2 of this, it's not really a season 2. But what they could do is bring back the showrunner, bring back the director, and have them do. What's it called? Dark Places, I believe, is another Gillian Flynn novel. Now, that has been adapted, but the adaptation, from what I've heard, is very subpar. It was like a made-for-TV movie, basically, or made-for-TV, like, limited series on something, like Lifetime Network or something. Apparently, it was very poor, and a lot of people feel like it deserves a better adaptation. So I could see them bringing back a lot of the same creative people, but having a whole new cast, almost like a, you know what I mean, almost like they do a True Detective, right? Where it is kind of another season, but it's almost a whole separate story. And I can see them coming back and doing a different novel of Gillian Flynn's.
But it wouldn't be called Sharp Objects.
No, it wouldn't be called Sharp Objects. So it wouldn't even be.
So you're saying it wouldn't even be a sequel series at all. It would just be another adaptation of something that she wrote.
But they could potentially bring back the same creative team. So in that sense, you would be getting more. Like you liked what Jean-Marc Vallée did with this, right? And you liked the way they built this show, and you want to see them back. You might get that. I could see that. Now, I should also say Gillian Flynn on Twitter, I don't know if you saw this, I think I retweeted it on the account. She said like a big thank you to them, and then she said more soon in that tweet. Did you scroll down the comments?
People were freaking out, but the
thing
is,
people were losing their mind about the more soon. But she then, she then later said like all she meant was she had more gratitude to give, and she wanted to thank more people later. Not she was saying there's more soon, there's more coming from this show, there's more coming from this story. And I think that is basically a confirmation as well from the author that there is not more soon from Sharp Objects. So unfortunately, I get the need, like I get the sense that you want more, but I think we all just need to be happy with what we got here. That's my opinion, at least.
I completely agree, and I feel this way about so many shows and so many. It gets to the point where you don't need more of it. Just rewatch it again because you're not going to enjoy the second season like you did the first. And that's I'm just painting with broad strokes right now, but I'm just saying in general, I would much rather see a perfect show remain untouched rather than come out with a second season and not have it have the same creatives behind it, not have it the same drive or story to tell, and then we fall off a cliff and have a situation where the show's just remembered for the second season or something. It's just, I almost, and like, this is probably blasphemy for a lot of people who listen to this, but I don't know. I'm not even going to say it because it's just
no, you got to say it. I want to hear it.
Okay, so I feel look,
go out on the limb, man. I see you out on the end of the limb. You're out in the cold.
I'm going off on it. Okay, so
I'm ready to cut the branch as soon as you get out there.
My argument is that if Walking Dead would have ended with season 1, it would be a masterpiece that would be remembered forever as a standalone piece of TV that nobody could touch. But we get season 2, and then we get season 3 with the prison, and then we get in the weeds, and they don't know what story they want to tell, and they spin their wheels for 5 or 6 seasons. They had the biggest show on TV, and they lose the fan base. And now they're like, how do we write off all these characters and end the show in a disgrace, in my opinion, a more disgraceful way than going out on a high?
We could have a whole nother episode about Walking Dead easily because there's a lot that happened with that show. Changed showrunners many times, several times. The original showrunner's vision was a much stronger, in my opinion, than what we got later. He wanted to do like an art house zombie show. Almost.
Which is kind of what he tried to do in the first season.
I agree. Season 1 is amazing. I don't know if it's a masterpiece, but it is a very, very solid season of television. And I agree they should have kept him. And whether or not they did another season, the main thing was they needed to keep him on board. But I was getting ready to chop the branch off. But I'm with you. I see what you're saying there. And what I'm going to bring it back to the discussion of sharp objects and say that I think this is an example of something that I think a lot of art, and whether it's books or film or TV, we get this all the time, right? And I don't know if it's a uniquely American problem or it's just a human problem, but people want more, right? Like they see something they like and they say, I want more of that. Give me more. And I see this all the time in fiction. And people write books and then they're pressured, and whether it's by the publisher or by the fans, to write more of it. Now, and maybe they wrote a trilogy and they're pressured to write more of it. And I think there is a point where we have to realize that, there's such thing as too much of a good thing. That's why it's a cliche, right? You can love something, but, like you can love a steak dinner and a most amazing filet mignon dinner or whatever, but like if you eat that every night for a year, like you're not going to love it anymore. and there's some of that with shows too. Like you just can't, unfortunately, as much as we want to replicate that experience over and over and over again, it just doesn't work every time. Like certain stories just need to be self-contained. That's my soapbox moment for the week.
I agree with you, and like I get on here as well. For the most part, like I'm guilty of it, right? It's like if I love something, I'm like, oh my gosh. The in the back of your mind, you're thinking like, if they don't bring everybody back, it might not be as good. But like, you need more content, you need more, and it would be so nice to have more. But I think as creatives, we're taught like less is more, and like you tell your story and you get out. And like if we can keep going down this path, because there's another thing that I want to name, a show like Lost. When you get into it, that show had to go so many. They had to at that point in creating television. They were at a period where they had to negotiate their end date because the network wanted to just keep going forever. Yeah. And the creatives were like, the show's in, like, it's having like decreasing returns right now. We need to end the show before it gets really bad. And it's just like the idea that you get in and you tell your story. And I think the British do it really well, actually. Like they tell their story, and whether it was 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes, 1 season to 6 seasons, like they tell their story and they get out.
Yeah, well, you could argue, I mean, we're getting into all of television here. Sherlock on BBC, right? Some people would argue that the most recent season maybe was too far, went too far.
They're being Americanized, though. Like, that's right. The American audience that's pressuring
demanding
them into
more,
it. Yeah. But when that show when it was a strictly British, more British show, like season 1 and season 2, they took like a couple year gap between season 2 and 3.
All right, man. We got to get back to Sharp Objects, or we're going to get our first 1-star review as someone gets pissed off at us for not talking about the thing at hand.
All right, back to Sharp Objects.
Fair enough if that happens. Well, let me say there's a big difference here too, right? We get Curry in the show shows up at the house to be there when they find Camille, and in the book that doesn't happen. So I wanted to touch a little bit on if you're ready to move on from Vickery, the difference in their relationship in the show and the book.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because in our episode where we were trying to make predictions, we made this this prediction that like maybe Curry would show up and like save the day, and we were like maybe he won't. I kind of felt like that was the weaker story to tell, to have him like swoop in and save the day in this show that's been primarily female led and like championing these female characters. To have a male character swoop in and save the day seemed like a little low hanging to me almost. But they did it in a way that I really liked in the show. Like I did end up really liking,
because he doesn't really save her. Like there's not much he can do in that moment. It's
well, he does.
It's more just like he comes in. Yeah, you're right, because he's the one who notifies Richard, right?
Right. They swoop in and save the day.
Yeah.
But I didn't. It's not that I didn't like it, because I think the reason that the show earns it is because the relationship between Camille and Curry that they have over the phone throughout the course of the series.
Well, and that's backed up in the book too. As much as I want to say they're different, they are the same but presented differently. I think in both, Irene and Curry especially are stand-ins for sort of a surrogate parent, like surrogate family. It's the family she never had, Camille never had. Right, and in the book we get that very strongly after what happens with Emma, where she kind of ends up moving in with them and being their ward, and they're like have to take care of her and give her the love that she never got to rehabilitate her. Which there's a big change there I want to talk about. Should I talk about it now or should I save it?
Let's just talk about it. We're here.
Okay, so just so you know, there is something that happens in the book that is extremely triggering for people, and does not happen in the show. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. So check out now if you don't want it spoiled. But so Camille in the book, driven by what happens with Emma, the revelation that Emma is a serial killer, goes into the bathroom and takes a knife and carves up the spot on her back that she's been saving, quote unquote saving. Right. And she cuts again in a very brutal kind of bloody scene. And that doesn't happen in the show. In the show, we get the more rosy, like, it seems like Camille... Now, I guess it ends before that happens, I guess you could argue in the show. But we don't see Camille cut again. And I think... So that leaves the show as kind of a different sort of... Like, you don't get that backslide into her old ways. Whereas in the book, it's darker, I think, because of that. That detail alone is darker because we see her go back to that thing that she's been trying to overcome. And she's driven back to it, and I think it still ends on a positive note, because I think we can read between the lines and see that she is going to, I think, get better over time.
In the show or in the book?
In the book, I think we see that living with Curry and Irene, like, she's going to get rehabilitated. She's getting the love she never had, and even though she's this like adult child at this point, who has to be like taken care of, and like they have to keep sharp objects away from her and all this stuff. Again, she's kind of relapsed. I don't know. I guess I wanted to think that she's on the right path at the end.
I think in the book I agree with you. In the show, because we don't get that scene, I think that we've talked about it on the podcast. I like ambiguous endings because it leads to conversation, and it leads to it almost gives you a way to use your imagination in a show where they're showing you everything that's happening. You know what I mean? Leaving it ambiguous, you use your imagination to fill in the blanks for the ending. And I think that it's a stronger ending because it also leaves somebody, even if you've read the book, it's surprising because it's like, oh, where was that scene? Oh, does she do that in the end? Like after that we cut to black.
Yeah, and I think there are some differences in medium there, because I think people expect more details in a book. Like, people want to know more of the kind of like denouement, like the falling action of the story. They want to know more of those, whereas they can be okay in a show that just gives us some couple flashes, right? Which specifically...
I thought this was really unique, and I want to talk about this, but I think we should jump back to one more thing before we finish up, get to the very, very end.
Okay, and I have one more thing too.
So I wanted to talk about the scene where Camille is actually trying to call for she can hear Richard down trying to come inside, and Alan's turning him away, which I think completely makes him complicit in all of it because he lies.
He knows in that moment. Yeah. You're right.
He's
but
lying.
He doesn't get arrested or anything. We never see him get arrested.
No. Well, so and there's another group of people who don't get arrested that we need to talk about at the end.
Yeah.
the scene where Camille is like powerless. She can't call for help. She's trying to, and she's like stumbling around the house. And then we get that stomach dropping moment where we see that Amma didn't leave the house to go get help. She was just been playing in her dollhouse the whole time. She's been playing with a dollhouse when she's like drugged up. And it's just this moment of just like, you were like, oh, at least maybe Amma got away. But since she didn't, it was the moment of me being like, okay, yeah, so Amma did it probably.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because we somehow we've made it this far into the episode without mentioning this was my theory when we were breaking down theories, right?
Yeah.
This was my theory. My theory was that Amma was actually the serial killer, even though Adora is the one who killed Marion, and that Amma specifically was... Now, I thought she was just hiding her teeth. I didn't quite make the leap, and I should shout out Caitlin wrote in.
Yeah.
My sister wrote in, and she was like, yeah, you were talking about the teeth, but what if they were used to be the floor in the house? And like when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, of course that makes sense. That's what she would be doing with it. So I was like halfway there. I didn't quite get all the way there.
So I bought your teeth being in the dollhouse thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's not enough. Like I kept feeling like that wasn't enough. And then she told me that with the teeth in as the ivory floor, and I was like,
which I don't know why I didn't
exactly
because
what it is.
I laid it all out. We talked about like, oh, the teeth are important. It's like just like the ivory. Like we even said that in the episode. For some reason, I didn't quite connect the dots. I got like 99% of the way there and didn't quite. But anyway. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of like impressed with myself because normally when I think I'm gonna like figure shit out in a mystery, I am nowhere near it. So yeah. I'll just indulge in myself in a moment of patting on the back of I felt like I got this pretty good. Like I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, as the pieces fell into place, I was more and more inclined to agree with you, but I was like, no, I gotta disagree and find something different.
So watching that final episode though, like we, as of the last one we recorded, we didn't know what was gonna happen. So what was that experience like of the reveals for you, like of the Amma reveal, and if you could just kind of like tell me like what you were thinking when that was all going down after the Adora stuff? Did you think it was over? And like,
no,
because you hadn't read the book. I read the book first. So like when Amma went and lived with her, and you were getting kind of this extended thing, what were you thinking?
Which is funny because when in one of our episodes, I also predicted as like a too happy to be true ending. I was like, yeah, Amma goes and lives with Camille, and then that totally happened, which I had no idea. Like I could have, and it was funny because it was like Curry made it out all right. Like for a second, I thought we were gonna get the very happy ending that we predicted. You know what I mean? Like it was getting there.
Yeah.
And but then we got the reveal of the teeth.
So
and
when
like,
was it the dinner scene where she gets mad because she calls her friend just sucking up to Camille? Like where did you start to go like this isn't just happy ending?
Okay, so I mean not just happy ending. Like I was saying before, when Amma didn't go get Richard, I was like, okay, Luke was right. Amma did it. The teeth are in the house. And like a day before, Caitlin had told me about the teeth in the dollhouse, and as soon as she told me that, I was like, okay, Amma 100%. But as far as like seeing it, I knew that everything wasn't all right from the Amma not getting Richard. And then as soon as we saw the other little girl that she was going to be friends with in St. Louis, I was like, okay, it's like I was right about the fact that there was another girl that was going to die. I just didn't think it was going to be this late into the story that another girl was going to die.
I didn't think they were going to do it that way in the show.
Really?
So I didn't think we were going to get the new girl getting killed. I thought we were going to instead get just a scene of Camille finding the teeth, which we got. You know what I mean? But I didn't think they were going to introduce this other character that they did in the book. But they did it. And that's why I said, like, I was amazed at how faithful this adaptation was. Down to details like that. So I guess the leaving out the cutting is like the biggest deviation other than Calhoun Day, right?
Right. And I would say that the leaving out of the cutting is literally just that. It's just leaving it out. It's not saying that it didn't happen. Like, we didn't see her reaction. We just saw her, like, find it in shock, and then it cuts to black, which I think we should talk about that cut to black as well, because I think that's an important moment. But going back to the teeth, finding of the teeth, something that I thought was really interesting that I put together at the very end here was when she looks inside and sees the teeth on the ivory floor, it's incomplete. Yeah. There's not enough teeth to go across the full ground. So that was that leap where it was like there was like that needed perfection in the dollhouse that Amma needed, and everything had to be perfect. And it was like that control that was passed down from Adora that she needed to kill another girl, take her teeth to finish out the flooring.
Which is more of a show thing, because in the book it's not really
it's
like
only
that.
a show thing. No, it's only a show thing. Yeah.
Yeah. In the book, it's what is it? So in the book, it's more that she was jealous. We learn. Okay, so that's another thing we get in the book. We learn more why she killed the girls. Whereas I think a lot of show watchers might rightfully go, "Why did she kill the girls? Just for the teeth?" Mm-hmm. Whereas in the book, it's laid out for us that Amma killed the girls because they were getting attention from Adora that she was jealous of, and I don't know. I watched a little like post credits showrunners kind of talking about why they made certain decisions, and I think they kind of say that, but I don't know how much of it is actually in the show.
Say what?
They talk about Amma's jealousy. They're like, oh yeah, we've been showing Amma being jealous and all this stuff, but like,
they definitely drive the nail home at the end. Like, there's that moment where they're at the table and she's like talking about how she wants to go into politics or journalism, and she's like, "You're just doing that to suck up to Camille." Yeah. And like that was really like if you didn't get it, like it was driving the point home right there. I felt like.
Yeah, I guess. I just wonder how many people didn't understand that. That's literally why Amma kills people.
Right. Jealousy.
It is jealousy. We also got, so I think the teeth also look different in the book. They were described as being like all broken and shattered and kind of just like grisly, whereas in the show it looked like they had been carefully placed more to look like a floor. Like you could still see some like gross teeth like ridges and stuff, but it looked more like they had been built into tiles almost, arranged in a way to look more like tiles. Yeah, whereas in the show, that was their explanation for how Amma was able to do it. Like, because they had said, a young girl couldn't do this, which I don't know if I believe anyway. But then they were saying like, well, she could as long as you don't care what the tooth looks like once you're done pulling it out. And so I think the book, and my imagining of how it looked in the book was far more grisly. But I don't know, like I think I like the way they did in the show because it was also like disturbing in a different way to have it look almost like it was a floor. I don't know.
What is "Don't tell Mama" mean to you as the last line? Like, what is she literally just saying like "Don't tell Mama," like she's not gonna know, or like what do you think that means?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think maybe Amma wants to think that Adora doesn't know that about her. And yeah, like she doesn't want her secret to be revealed. But this brings me back to another thing I forgot to mention. I think Adora did know. And I think the proof of that is when Richard comes to arrest her, she says, I wrote it down.
I know what you're talking about, but she said she's mentally ill, but she's talking about Camille. I rewound to make sure.
I didn't think she was talking about Camille. I think she thinks that Richard is there to arrest Amma.
Right.
And I think she's saying she's mentally ill about Amma, particularly.
I agreed with, like, I thought that was what it was as well, but I, like, specifically rewound, like, 2 or 3 times, and what I took from it is that, because she says Camille is mentally ill, and you can barely hear it in the background, and then when it cuts over, it's her talking to Richard, and she's like, she's mentally ill, you don't understand. So I think maybe it was the filmmaker's intention to make you think one way or the other, like, there's something else there. But from what I got from it,
the filmmaker is making, is leading you to believe she's talking about Camille, but I think what she's actually doing is trying to set up a defense for Amma, because in this moment Adora doesn't think Richard's there for her, because they haven't got the handcuffs out yet. So I think in this moment she thinks, oh shit, Richard's here because he's here to arrest Amma, and I think to me it's proof, and I don't know, maybe I need to go back and watch it again, but to me it's proof that Adora knows that Amma is actually the serial killer.
My reasoning for real, like, this is why I think it's not, is because she specifically says, like, the full sentence that she says is, you can't believe anything that she says. You can't believe her. She's mentally ill. Camille is mentally ill, basically.
I never heard the name. So you're saying you're 100% sure she says the name Camille there?
100%, yeah.
Okay. Well, although it could be like, that could still be the same way, because she could be saying, you can't believe Camille because she's mentally ill, so you can't believe what she said. But she could still be defending Amma.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, but
because it didn't seem like to me in the show in that moment, Adora thinks that Richard's there to arrest her. I think she thinks that Richard is there to arrest Amma.
Gotcha. Agree to disagree.
I don't know. I want to watch it again now. Maybe you're right, because you watched it multiple times, so maybe I just got the wrong read on it. But when I heard her say that, I was like, oh shit.
I thought so too at first. Yeah. Like I definitely thought that she was saying like Amma is mentally ill, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. So circle back around though, because since I mean I don't know if we can come down one way or another for sure, but the don't tell mama thing. What was your take on that? It sounds like maybe you had an alternate take.
So I mean that's what I really just didn't know what to make of it at first. I was really thinking about this for a while, and I wanted to ask you, but I think it's more. I think it was an interesting way to end the show more than it was something being told to Camille, even though it definitely was being told to her. It's just like, don't tell mama. It's a callback to the fact that like Adora is killing people. They're both serial killers. I guess my read on it is just that she didn't want her mom to know this side of her because she wanted to be this innocent girl in front of her mom at all times.
Well, I also think it shows how deluded Amma is about her relationship with Camille, because I think she's like, we're sisters and we're co-conspirators here. It's kind of like when like your sibling sees you doing something you're not supposed to be doing according to the parents, and then you say like, we're in on this together now. Don't tell her that, you saw me doing this. And I think here it's like, yeah, it's almost ridiculous the idea that she would keep this secret. But maybe maybe Amma believes that in this moment because she actually thinks they have this relationship right now, right?
So I feel like we should definitely mention this scene just because I felt like it was really weird. The Jackie scene when Jackie's going to see Adora right after they're leaving. What did that really mean to you for the show? Because the show kind of had a different... They were mad... Like, Camille and Jackie were mad at each other last they saw each other. And then this scene is, like, really weird about how she, like, invites her to come visit sometime, or maybe I'll come visit. Do you think that was their way of just, like, patching up their relationship, or was there something else there?
Yeah, I think they make Jackie seem, just, like, more complicit in the show. Mm-hmm. And more almost like she has a lot to gain from Adora being taken down. Like, she can become the next kind of queen of the town. And so I think Camille, at least, doesn't view Jackie as a friend. Whereas I think in the book it was a little different, in my opinion. It seemed more like genuine. Like, Jackie genuinely just cared about them and was in a bad place and couldn't call Adora out on it because she didn't have proof. That kind of stuff. I don't know. Yeah. I guess that was my take on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's that like I was talking about before with Alan, it's like being a Wind Gap resident is like being complicit to these things and letting things happen without making a fuss and rocking the boat. And I think it was more of like that was her character and that she was kind of apologizing for it. But you can tell that their relationship isn't ever going to be good. Like she probably won't ever go to visit.
Yeah. I did want to touch on a couple details we got in the book that we didn't get in the show that I thought were perfect for this world. There's a website put up called freeadora.org by people who in the town who like don't believe that she should have been imprisoned for killing Marion, that it was just like an accident or something, I guess, and that she's being wrongly called a killer and all this stuff. And yeah, it's very like it is very Wind Gap, right? Like to try and just kind of like gloss over it and not care about what happened to somebody, and it's more about this person you like. I don't know, like you can almost extrapolate this out to like a lot of what's going on in Hollywood with like men who are getting outed as sexual predators and people who don't want to believe it, right? And want to stand up for them just because that's the person they know. And like and like you're familiar with,
want to
like, you don't want to believe it, and that happens here with Adora. People in town just don't want to believe it, and so they're going to actually do this thing where they're trying to fucking free her. And then we also hear about all these books being written about this murderous family and her part in it. And I guess I just want to take a moment to talk about that dynamic of the family, of the mother who is got Munchausen's by proxy, who wants attention through harm that she deals to her kid. And then you have the kid who wants attention from the mother and is willing to murder anyone who gets the attention. And then you have Camille, who kind of opted out of this attention from the mother, and then we see her just like her whole entire life has been wrecked by it, right? Like and everything that's gone on with his family, and she even talks at the end about how she worries that she has the same sickness.
Yeah, that was very interesting. That's definitely what we should do. That the idea that she thinks that the way that she cares about Amma is too close to, she feels like, should she like caring for Amma because it's her sister and it's the right thing to do, or does she have the same sickness that Adora has?
Right. Yeah, and you could argue, I mean, I don't think this is the case, but I think the book is putting it out there, like, is her writing these articles and outing her family, is that like a way to get sympathy? And I don't think it is, but I think in a mind that worries about that, I think she could rightfully get caught up on it, right? And say like, oh my God, am I just doing the same thing my mother did? And it's sad, like it's tragic that she could think that, because I don't think that is the case at all. But I could see her worrying about that. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really, really fascinating family, right? And I think reading the Wikipedia thing where we were reading the quote from Gillian Flynn talking about wanting to write villainous women, I want to say that I think reading that at the beginning really set us down the path that we needed to be on. Because I think the whole time I was going, she said she likes to write about this.
Right.
So that's probably why it's going to be the women in this book. Whereas I think if you read this novel, it's the first thing you ever read from Gillian Flynn and you knew nothing about her. She had no other career. Like, I think a lot of this would have been a lot more surprising, right? Like,
right. Well, I would say in general, if I was just if I was casually reading this book rather than reading it for the podcast, and if I didn't know the things that we knew going in, I think that you would have a different experience because you're more likely to just go with the mystery and kind of try to figure it out as you're reading it. But it's like if you're the kind of person like me, like I like to read a ton and then put the book down whenever I have to. If you're like that, you're probably not going to have time to process every little detail and come up with the end of the mystery like we have here, because we're reading in sections and taking a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another thing I want to talk about happens in the book. We find out what happens to Amma. She gets arrested, and sent to this like almost like a mental institution.
Yeah.
But we learn that she's only going to be locked up until she turns 18, and then she's going to be released. And it's because she's a minor, right? And it's one of those things where I think it's like a fair. It's like the book is asking a question, right? Like, is that something we should be okay with? And it's like in our society, it's like, if you're a kid and you commit a crime, like you shouldn't necessarily have the rest of your life taken away. But then you also get, I don't know, I got the sense that like Emma's not going to be cured by her time in the mental institution. She's going to get out and be just as bad. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely something to be said there. And I think it's like, we can get into law if we want to, but I think we just briefly, I would say like, I think in an egregious situation like this, like Amma situation, there shouldn't be any sort of like, oh, you're a minor, like slapping on the wrist type thing. Like,
so you think she should have been tried as an adult?
I think so, yeah. When this kind of stuff happens, you have to, because otherwise you end up with people like this that end back up.
So let me just play devil's advocate here. You could also say this girl was twisted by her mother. Like, she was living with someone who was poisoning her. Mm-hmm. And she backslid and killed somebody once she got out of that situation. But how, like, but could you be rehabilitated? And you know what I mean? Like, once you're like truly out of it and away from it. And I don't know, like, I think there's also the world of fiction and there's also the real world.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Is like, yeah. I have a hope that anyone can be rehabilitated and anyone can, in the right situation, come back around. But I'm also like a, positive person that thinks that way. I think that my argument, if this was the real world, would be if she had killed these people and then gotten away from her mom, then I would think I would try her as a minor potentially, or at least think about it. But it's the fact that she had gotten away from her mom and then had to do it again and killed this girl that would kind of cement it for me, that it was like, it's not going to just be something that goes away relatively easy. Yeah. And it seems like it was like, I don't know.
There's no easy answer here, because we've seen, so I listened to some true crime podcasts, and I think it was the last podcast on the left, which I mentioned in a previous episode. They did an episode about Ed Kemper, which is, he's one of the main things in Mindhunter.
Yeah.
But he murdered his grandparents when he was a minor, and then went and spent time in a mental institution, and then was released when he became of age, because they thought that he was no longer a danger to anyone. And then he went on to be a serial killer who murdered all these women, right?
Yep.
And then actually killed his mother. So that's an example of where it's like he played the system and convinced them, told them the things they wanted to hear so he could get out and do it again. And I could totally see Amma doing the same thing here, right? And I think it just shows how, like, it's like the 1% of the 1% of most fucked up serial killer minds, right? And how our system can't really, it's like not nimble enough to be able to handle someone like that. Because if you make laws for that one crazy case, there's going to be so many other people who get caught up in it who would actually be able to be rehabilitated, who aren't that, like, you know, Machiavellian level planner of serial killer. So I don't know, like, I guess I understand the difficulty in trying to make laws for this sort of thing. Because who gets to decide whether or not you're an Ed Kemper, or if you're someone who was raised in a fucked up situation, did something terrible, but, like, can have a normal life if you are just rehabilitated? And how can you ever know?
Yeah, I think it's just case by case, and it's just like the law. Everybody knows the law is broken, and who really knows how these things can.
And maybe the answer is, like, there needs to be more follow up, because I think the main problem is, like, with Ed Kemper, it seems like he was just, like, released, and they sent him back to live with his mother, who they knew was the source of all this crazy, like, problems, right? Mm-hmm. And they were like, yeah, go live with your mother, you'll be okay. And then, like, that was it. There was no more, like, follow ups or anything, as far as I know. So yeah, like, maybe not just, like, release and you're free to go and you don't ever have to come back in and we're not going to check in on you or anything like that. Like, maybe that's bad. Maybe there needs to be some sort of like continuing something. I don't know what it is and what it looks like, but anyway, that's something for people who think about this a lot more than I do. Need to figure out. So I did want to give some shout-outs because we got some feedback this week, partly from my family. We already mentioned Caitlin earlier, my sister, and your girlfriend.
Yes.
And we also got Ben, my brother, wrote in as well. I guess my family is really digging this show. And my brother, I mean, he wrote other things. He had a lot of feedback for us, but I'm going to focus on this first point here he makes. He says, internal thoughts on screen as flashes of memories, often manifested seamlessly within scenes. A big deal because usually that's what I tell people you lose when you're getting an adaptation. You don't get internal thoughts except an occasional voiceover. This is something I think we talked about very early on, but I like the way he put that is they really cleverly found a way, right, to show internal thoughts on screen.
I mean, this is one of the major things that stood out to me about this show and what makes it feel really unique and, like, vital. The flashes that we get and the merging of time periods and the way that it all comes together and how it, like, contemplates a lot of these things. Like, we feel when Camille is contemplating, we're contemplating with her and we're seeing flashes of things and it just makes for a more close feeling with the character rather than it just being told to you in, like, a voiceover or not getting it at all.
Yeah, it's a really clever way to do it. I don't necessarily want to act like this has never been done before.
No, yeah,
because I'm sure it has. It was done really well. You know what I mean? Like, it's taking something that's been done and just really finding a great way to do it. And I agree.
Especially the fact that the town is the way it is really plays a huge factor in making this feel like this might not work in another show, but the way that they do it, like you said, it's technically impressive, and it's also, this town has so much built into it and so many memories and hidden secrets and things that were getting doled out to us in this way, and I think it works really well, like you said.
Yeah, man. So I also want to shout out Grant, another one of our listeners who's not related to us in any way, who wrote in saying that he enjoyed the way we covered this show, and he asked if we would consider doing a graphic novel like The Watchmen or V for Vendetta. So what's your response to that?
I mean, absolutely. I'm heavily influenced by comics and graphic novels and stuff, so I would love to do those at some point. We've talked about doing some other ones as well. I think we can safely say that we're going to do Watchmen, and V for Vendetta I'd love to. So
yeah, I agree. I think the only challenge is not a huge one, but it's just that you're taking something that's very visual, you know what I mean? And you're trying to talk about it in an audio format, but we already do that with movies. So yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't. And I think Watchmen is a for sure, because we know that Damon Lindelof is going to be adapting. Although it sounds like his is more of a spiritual adaptation, or like a follow-up almost.
And I mean, if we do that, I feel like within that coverage, we'll probably hit on Snyder's Watchmen as well.
Yeah, whether we'll do a whole episode for it or not, I don't know. Maybe we will. Yeah, maybe we'll do the book, maybe we'll do Zack Snyder, and then we'll do the show in some fashion. But yeah, I absolutely think that's going to be in the cards for us eventually.
So I just have one more thing that I want to talk about, but I think fittingly we should talk about this at the very end.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's save it for the very end.
So we just talked about her, but we're going to shout out one of our patrons. This is actually my girlfriend, your sister. I almost flipped that. I'm really glad I didn't. And we just wanted to thank her for supporting us on Patreon.
Yeah, thanks, Galen.
And to all of our patrons, we really appreciate you helping us out and continuing this podcast.
Yeah, they make a huge difference in our ability to do this show. I also just want to say, if you want to connect with us, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Ink2Film on all three. Come follow us.
And if you want to send feedback like the ones that we got, you can send whatever feedback that you get to ink2film@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if you want to support us in a way that doesn't require any money at all, leaving us a review on iTunes helps boost us. It helps get visibility for the show, which is extremely helpful.
And thank you to Ross Bugden for the use of our intro and outro music.
All right, man, you said you had one final topic, so let's get it before we close off this project.
So the final topic, since we've kind of done our credits here, when we get into the credits of the episode, our post-credit scene is actually we get like flashes of Amma killing the girls, killing Anne, Natalie, and Maya, I believe her name was.
Yeah, I think it's Lily in the book. The new
friend. I think it is different.
They changed it. I don't know why.
Yeah, but let's talk about the flashes and the way that... did you end up like going back and pausing and trying to parse through it, or did you just experience it?
I didn't pause, no. I just kind of experienced it, and it was funny because I started writing a note that said, well, they didn't reveal... Amma... they didn't reveal how Amma killed the girls, and like that the fact that her friends helped and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like writing that note as it flashed up on screen, and I don't know, like I want to get your take. Like, how did you feel about the format of doing that? Because I almost didn't like it.
I loved it.
See, because there are a lot of people, and I am one of these people, who will often stop a credit sequence because they want to talk about what they've just seen. So they'll pause it to like stop the music, and they'll talk about like what we've just seen with the person you're sitting across from, and then by the time you're done talking about it, you're like, all right, and then you turn it off. So I'm wondering, like, there's got to be people who didn't see those sequences, and so the risk you're running of doing that, I think, is big, and those are really important bits of information in my opinion.
Well, I would argue that so this is kind of how I came down on it and why I loved it. So the show is Camille's show. We've talked about this multiple times. It's so close to Camille. And to show her realizing it and then flashing to Amma killing the girls wouldn't make any sense for how close it was to her. So by cutting to black and having Camille just be left to wonder and us left to wonder, and then ending up giving us the scenes that we wanted to see, kind of.
Yeah.
I think that's smart, and I think that the way that it's like the perspective that we would have never gotten through Camille. Like we cut away to these gruesome murders that happened, and that shot of Amma there at the end, just like like she was just loving it. She was like having such a good time killing these people.
You know what I think it is too? I worry about missing it, and like I think back about episodes where I'm like, was there a bonus scene that I missed? Because I definitely stopped it.
Well, this is my thing, is that if you watch the show, chances are you're probably going to go online and talk about it or hear somebody talk about it. And if you hear that there's a scene, because it's HBO Go, or if HBO in general, if you have it, you're probably going to go back and try to see the scene.
Yeah, but now you have to. And might you be a little bit annoyed when you're like, oh fuck, there was something bonus? I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I could see I don't know. So I get what you're saying. I think for me also, I am someone who hates Marvel post-credit scenes. Mm-hmm. I hate the fact that every time I see a fucking Marvel movie, I have to sit in the theater for 20 minutes and watch an insane length of shit to get the final scene.
You don't have to.
No, but I do have to.
No, you don't.
If I don't do it then, I'm never going to see it because I'm totally never going to look it up because I don't care enough.
Well, all those people who made the movie wanted you to see their name.
God, man. And I fucking hate it because as I'm watching it, I'm always like, I said this to my wife. I'm like, couldn't they just fucking double time it for me? Like, just double time the you know what I mean? Like, your name is still there, and if you want to pause it later, you can see it on the DVD. But fucking double time that shit so that I can get my ass out of this theater. I don't like it.
If your name was in the credits, you wouldn't want them to double time past your name.
Double time it, man. Fuck it. I don't care. I'm there. You can pause it. No one's reading every fucking name anyway.
If you're in the premiere,
10,000 names.
If you're in the premiere or something, you're definitely reading the names.
They list the entire country of New Zealand and some of that shit. Like it's like literally just go down the citizens of New Zealand. We're gonna list every single one for Lord of the Rings. It's crazy. Some of those. I mean, it's. Nah, I don't know, man. Sorry, that's another soapbox moment. But so I think I have a little bit of that, and then my worry that whenever I don't watch like the TV and movies are now trying to teach me that I have to watch to the end of every credit sequence, and I just don't know if I like that.
Yeah,
like I'm a little bit frustrated with that. Anyway, we've gone on too long in this post-credit scene. We should probably end it, man. Unless you got something else.
Yeah, let's go ahead and end it.
Okay, so I do want to say we're going to be covering Coraline next. We probably should have said that earlier. So we hope you come and listen to Coraline. We're going to do a episode for the book and then an episode for the movie, back to our normal format. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, this has been a fun project. It's been cool to try something different. So thank you so much for coming along with us on this journey. And yeah, we hope you come back next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I can't wait for Coraline also. I like the studio that makes Coraline. Like we'll talk about it when we get there, but I can't wait.
Cool, man. All right, until then, I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
See ya.